I want to throw out a possibility at you for machine embroidery or hand embroidery of something you may not expect. And yes, I'm going to talk about the quilt in front of me. But I'm also going to talk about the Q-snap frame that is on the right from my pipe loom, right on the floor. That is, I think, a 16-inch frame. It might be 15-inch. And one of the things I have planned is 16-inch squares for a quilt with red crosses on them, like hospital blankets for, and it's all still going back to the Korean War and MASH and everything. And I may have to actually use my wooden frame more than these, simply because with that being a 15 or 16-inch square, it's not really going to hold a 16-inch square tight enough. But what it might work for is this quilt. Now this quilt is about, I don't know, 36, maybe 45 inches square. It's a quilt I made for my son when he was, I probably made it before I had him. Right before I had him, I was making things for his room. And he was due at Christmas time, so I wanted everything done long before I got to my due date. Very plain on the back, plain red fabric, blue binding. I quilted it in squares, large squares, because the fabric is pre-quilted. So this is about 30 years old. He's a little older than that, so maybe even going on 32 years old. And regular store-bought fabrics that have held up wonderfully. He used this as a baby all the way up to probably 8 years old, maybe later, maybe 9. So, and then it was in his room as like a TV blanket as he got older. So, let me just pick these up. Here's another piece I'm working on, is a cross-stitch rose that I'm going to make into a quilt. Just a little miniature quilt. But on this one, so obviously I've saved it, and, a lot of us do that. We just save things from our children. But what I'm thinking of doing is putting it in that Q-snap frame. And after watching Mia do treadle embroidery, I'm thinking of, what I do with my artwork a lot of times, like this. This started as a painting, drawing, in colored pencil, one of those. Then I designed a cross-stitch chart from that. I often will take needlepoint or cross-stitch fabric and draw right on it, and then color it in later. It's the same thing with store-bought fabric. Obviously, if you're not an artist, there's no reason why anyone with treadle embroidery or regular electric machine embroidery couldn't embroider right over that design. Use that as your template on the quilt. And of course, you'd want to practice on something else before you started doing it. Or even if you like hand embroidery. Not only you could outline each thing, but you could also do all the embroidery stitches on each of these and make it a real heirloom. So this is a project that is one of the ones that might go with the Singer 6212C. That machine has zigzag of different levels and has a feed dog cover plate, and might be a choice for embroidery. Might be. I could probably set it on straight stitch, put the feed dog cover plate on, and do embroidery like Mia was doing, only I'd be using an electric. So put your thinking caps on, look in the storage chest that you have your kids' things in, and see if you can give an old piece a whole new life with embroidery by machine or by hand. And if you don't want to do that, these are regular cross-stitch pieces that I'm actually going to tie or possibly machine quilt areas, and then put a backing. I've already made the backing, and make miniature quilts. Two more really good ideas. The reason I brought up the Q-snap is because the same as the pipe loom, I can unattach it at the corner and slide it into the machine, I think.